Literally Goa, the program about books and authors from Goa and books about Goa. Today we have with us Miguel Braganza, who has been an agricultural officer, a good friend for a long time. Don't get carried away by the fights and misunderstandings which we have online sometimes. But he's also been a schoolmate of ours, and he's got a profusion of books that he's published here, which he's edited, which he's contributed to 18 or 19 books. So Miguel, to start at the beginning, because people who may not know you need a gentle introduction to the many things that Miguel does and the many aspects of his life. Tell us how you began as a young agriculture student and how you got into writing.
My father was a teacher, but he used to cultivate crops, whether it was rice for the home or alsando or sauri, that is the cowpea, and we had a profusion of fruit trees at home.
Mapsa.
Mapsa. We lived in a 1 acre plot with the house inside it, and almost all fruits from chiku to mango to sweet limes, all the plants were there in our compound. And he used to often propagate them by air layering, and he would take me to do what we call grafting quite often, but basically from the same plant. So he would help me to do it, and it was a great satisfaction that in 1 month's time you can see the roots popping up.
I see.
And you get a new plant within 2 months. So that's something that I was doing. After 12th, I decided to do agriculture. Many people from Goa, and including some people like Lucinda Faria, had studied in Dapoli near Ratnagiri. So I went over there for my admission, but I found the facilities rather rustic. So I was hoping there would be a better college somewhere. And then finally I got a call from the government that there were seats offered in Bangalore. I grabbed it.
I see.
Along with another of my classmates. We went down there and did admissions, and I was there for 4 years in Bangalore.
Hebal.
In Hebal and in GKVK, which is a campus closer to the airport now. And after I completed my agriculture, 78 to 82, I came back. And in 83, I got a job as an agriculture officer in the government of Goa.
I see. And then I remember your books coming out. I used to buy them because I always collect Goa related books, and they were very inexpensive and very useful, in that sense. So tell us about these first 3 books which deal with growing vegetables.
So growing vegetables was a need that we found when we decided to do the Agriculture Officers Association along with the St. Xavier's College to do a course on the weekends for the students. Father Nicolau Pereira was there at that time as a principal, and he said, you're most welcome to teach them, they will have some skill.
Wow.
But we could not find literature that was suitable for Goa. Most of the literature was for the Deccan Plateau or for the Indo-Gangetic Plains, which is not the same thing as here. We have rain at a different time, we have different kind of soils, and we have different kind of pest problems. So at that time there was cyclostyling for making copies. We cyclostyled a book and we gave to them. And later on in 1987, we converted it into the first book, the Kitchen Garden Manual. Okay. Unfortunately, I don't have a copy of that here. Okay. But from the Kitchen Garden Manual, we came up with another book in 1994, which was called Growing Vegetables. This was done for a school, the St. Francis Xavier School in Sholin, where we were doing exhibitions.
So Miguel is a live wire. When he's around, you cannot be susegad or laid back or something like that. So you pushed all these agricultural officers, though you might not want to take the credit now. And I remember you all used to come out with a profusion of books.
Right.
Very slim, very low priced, very affordable, very informative. How many books in that series?
The Agriculture Officers Association has come out with 22 books.
Wow.
Out of which for 16 I have contributed, either as editor or as one of the major contributors of content.
What topics?
Topics were basically in agriculture. Some were devoted to the field crops like rice and peas and beans. The others were mostly on fruit crops, some on insect problems that you encounter, some on the diseases that you have, some on biological control of these problems, and others on marketing, use of machinery, and mechanization of agriculture, because labor was getting expensive and more people wanted to know how they could mechanize. And that is the key thing that's happening now in Goa, the mechanization, because the labor costs are prohibitive.
This was an interesting idea, no? Such a good idea where you are trying to take your knowledge and put it in the form of books, disseminate it widely at an affordable price, and the agricultural officers actually are doing work of spreading the knowledge. Otherwise, normally government servants tend to fight for their own rights,
Yeah.
no? In
Yeah,
that
yeah,
sense.
there were two major reasons for doing it and two major achievements from there. One is we wanted to disseminate the information to the people that they could read and understand instead of we explaining it every time to every person who had that same problem.
Right.
The other thing was it forced people to read because when you write, it remains. So you have to be correct when you write.
True.
So the officers were forced to read and it updates the information.
Wow.
Because if you pass out in 1974 and you're talking about it in 1994, world has changed.
Yeah.
And if you have passed out in 2000 and you're talking about in 2019, world has changed. When we were studying, there were no computers, there was no internet, there was no Google.
Yeah.
Everything was by abstract cards. Today it has changed and you have access to information, but you sometimes don't know what is correct.
We'll come back
Yeah.
to books in a little while because there are so many of them. But in terms of, the agricultural field, you have seen it change, Miguel, from the 80s when you joined as a young agricultural officer till now. You
Yes,
subsequently
yes,
took
yeah.
premature retirement and you have, been on your own and things like that. What are the changes you've seen, and are they positive, are they negative, are they a mix of both?
Basically, agriculture in the 60s, when I grew up, was subsistence. Everybody needed to grow rice for their own kitchen. There was no free sale of rice or sugar or wheat at that time. So if you grew, you ate. If you did not grow, you stood in line in the ration shop. Maybe you got, maybe you didn't. So most people, even educated persons, like my father was a teacher but growing rice because we needed to eat at home.
I see.
So everyone was looking at only how much they could eat. No one looked at it commercially.
I see.
Today people are looking at commercially. They're looking at profitability. It's not we need to grow because we need to live. You can live without growing anything. So if you're growing now, you are looking at making profit. You're looking at the alternate uses of the time. You could have done other things. So it has changed, yeah.
A few setbacks have come in. See, a lot of knowledge and inputs and new crops have come in. Together with that, irrigation facilities, the dams were built. Along the way, land has got diverted towards non-agricultural uses. Today, we are seeing a state where villagers are concerned that their land is not being used. Therefore, they are trying to work on it together in places like Shorao, Sanstevao, maybe Kutoni also.
Yeah,
to some
these
extent.
issues come out. In fact, what has happened in Goa is over a period of time, since most of the food grains are available cheaply in the open market, you tended not to grow. When you can buy, why work to grow it? Especially in Goa, we don't like to do so much of manual labor as people in other states do.
Dignity of labor is an issue.
Dignity of labor is one issue. And this issue basically comes from the schools because teachers say if you can't do this, if you can't answer maths, you can't answer English, then you'll have to go work in the fields. So
As if it's something
so
inferior.
people feel going to the fields is a punishment.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in the higher secondary, if you were absent for classes, you were forced to go to the library. I, who used to go to the library most frequently in school, stopped going to the library because my classmates started asking, for what are you punished? So this association of something good with punishment is what kills it. And that has happened in Goa.
I see.
Many people from the villages don't want to work in the field. They want something that they feel is more glamorous. So even if it's being a peon in a government office, it's more glamorous because they're working for the government. They don't tell what work they're doing. They say they're working for the government. Whereas if you're working in the field, you're working in the field. You can't put glamour to it very easily. So that has been an issue. The economics has been another issue, and tourism has brought alternate ways of earning money. So you can run a taxi, or you can run a tea stall, or you can run a food stall, and you can earn more money than doing farming.
True.
That fortunately is changing in the last 5 years.
But as far as your contribution goes, I know you have played a big role in propping up local festivals, for example, in places like Shioli.
Yeah.
You're always very generous with your advice and in promoting voluntary networks and things like that.
Right.
So can you tell us a little bit about how your books have helped knowledge to spread?
The books that we did for Siolim, for example, were dual purpose. We used to raise money for the festival through the advertisements put in the book.
I see.
So the book was a platform to raise money, but it was also a platform to transfer information to the people. So it was useful. For the Agriculture Officers Association also it was same thing. There was a lot of advertisement which was collected. The funds could be used for other activities of the association. But it gave a big fillip to information going to the people. They also promoted the ideas that were there of festivals in different places to the readers somewhere else.
Yeah.
And the festivals grew as a result in other places where we did not reach, only the books had reached.
This was plant festivals.
This was plant festivals.
So what is
yes.
the logic of a plant festival? Can you just elaborate?
The plant festival was started in Siolim to promote the working with one's hands and the dignity of labor among the students of that particular school, the St. Francis Xavier School, which also has a higher secondary. The next year they decided to involve the surrounding schools, 4 other schools which are there in Siolim were involved. And then the thought came is why do we limit it to only our village? Why not invite other schools from around? And now almost 30 to 35 schools from around Goa, including as far away as Dabal and Kankon, participate.
And that is over a period of 30 years, it has grown and sustained
Yes,
itself.
it has grown. This year we are celebrating the 28th festival
28th.
there, and it has grown. People around also now look at that festival as their festival to pick up plants, to pick up new inputs,
I see.
to pick up hand tools and such things. They wait for that time. They don't buy earlier
I see.
because they get good prices and they come
In the monsoon time.
in the monsoon time. And for the school, every student brings one plant. So it's 1,500 students, it's 1,500 plants that come to the hall.
They bring to sell?
They bring to exhibit,
To exhibit.
take part in the competition, and we give them prizes.
I see. I see.
So
What is the
yeah.
history of it? I know that it was started by Joel, Alexi and you. Who
Yes.
pushed whom?
actually, I think the main person to push it was Joel.
Joel.
Who
has passed away. He was very an active journalist
Very
and-
active. He passed away just before we could celebrate the 24th festival.
I see.
So what happened was Joel and Alexis had come for a festival of plants that we had at Kala Academy, organized by the Botanical Society of Goa. Joel was a journalist, Alexis at that time was doing cartoons.
Yeah.
So he said, why don't we do something like this in your school?
I see.
And they caught hold of the PTA president at that time, Laurie Fernandez, and they pushed the idea
I see.
and they decided to have the festival. So they went around the village, canvassed for it, got people organized to clean up their pots, plants and everything, and they brought 4 truckloads of plants to the school.
I see. They picked it up from different houses.
From
and brought-
different houses. The problem was none of them knew how to organize an exhibition
Okay. On plants. On plants.
on plants.
So they caught you
So they came to my house early in the morning.
the same day.
On the same day, that was the 14th of August, 15th was the exhibition. On the
Okay.
14th of August at 7:30 in the morning, they were at my house, picked me up and we went there. I thought it was a small job organizing an exhibition. I didn't realize what a mammoth task it was.
I see.
We finished arranging the plants at 6 in the morning on 15th of
My
August.
goodness.
I came home, shaved, had my breakfast and went for the inauguration.
Without sleeping a wink?
Without sleeping a wink. Our breakfast, lunch, tea, dinner, everything was provided by the French aliens
I see.
because none of us were going home, and so a whole big group of students, including Alex's daughter Memunar and all of them were there, and everyone worked through the night.
I see.
And that's how the festival was born, and it has inspired many people, and more importantly, it has lasted 27 years.
Sustained.
Sustained.
You know, Miguel, I feel that these initiatives have also snowballed others into doing different kinds of things. I'm not saying that we take the credit for others, but one idea inspires many others. Like you have today the full People's Festival that Marius has been holding in different parts. You have these village initiatives on promoting farming, and your columns have been carried on in a number of papers for a long period of time, and they are very readable. Which papers have you written on and on what themes? The range will be huge, in hundreds, I guess.
I started off writing with the Government Times Weekender
Weekender.
in 1992 January.
It was a very interesting place in those days.
And it was very interesting how I got into it. At that point of time, I was on deputation to the Goa University, and it was getting a lot of bad press. And so the Vice Chancellor asked me, can you do something to give us some good press?
Okay.
And I started going there to Government Times because I had some friends, and got working with them just to get something good thing written about what is happening in the university where I was working.
Yeah.
And
You
then
were the horticultural officer. You were the...
I was the garden superintendent there, the horticulture officer.
Okay.
So I just started doing a little bit PR. We are doing tree planting, we are doing an exhibition, we are doing an exhibition of Latin American plants or something of that sort, or something good that's happening in the university, not even related to plants, related to something else which was there. I would go and give the press notes out.
Yeah.
And then Niledia one day asked me, why don't you write? Instead of just talking and giving press notes, why don't you write?
Right.
And that's how I began writing a column called The Green Thumb in the Government Times Weekender.
Weekender was a very encouraging place to get people started off.
Yeah.
But having said that, also, you know, if you have something to say, then writing comes naturally to you. It's not very difficult in that sense, no?
It's not very difficult. Though when I was in school, I might have thought it was very difficult. Almost all my articles in the school magazine before my 9th standard were ghostwritten by my father.
That's the problem of being a son of a teacher, I guess.
He used to write, and they were given to the school because they thought since I was good in English, I should be writing. And I didn't have the love for writing. Okay. I had a knack for writing, but I didn't have the love for writing. But maybe getting this appreciation for the ghostwritten articles made me think of writing. By SSC, I was writing, and when I was in college...
You couldn't stop writing.
I edited the college magazine, and then we started our own writers club there, which inspired me in Bangalore, in Hebbal. When I was there in my 3rd year, we started a writers club with some of the seniors. But that was an international campus, and we had really very good writers from Malaysia and Sri Lanka who were there. And with them, I learned actually the writing skills.
You wrote for how many papers? I mean, newspapers, mainstream newspapers, series?
Yeah. Series I've done for the 3 main papers, Government Times, the Herald, and the Navin Times.
Full round almost.
Yeah. And I also write for the Goa Today, and that is also because...
This is the cover story, with the latest, the cover story on Goa's agro renaissance, which makes a lot of interesting points, and if you've not read it, I would suggest to the readers.
That was something, just before he passed away, Joel introduced me to writing for the Goa Today. I didn't write before that for Goa Today. He said, why don't you write? You are writing everywhere. You write. He was the assistant editor then. So I began writing maybe 4 issues before he passed away, and then I continued as a column. And
with a magazine, you also have a wider space, and you know you can make a point.
There are 2 things. One is the magazine's life is a month, whereas the newspaper's life is 1 day. So people tend to read it again after some time.
And this is stored, and years later, it's still valid.
So that's a great advantage, and it's got a very good editor, so gives the freedom to write as per my wishes, not that it's boxed into you write only this much.
So this is a cover story on Goa's agro renaissance. What I found interesting was this book on the biodiversity of Panjim city. Tell us a little bit about it.
The Biological Diversity Act has been passed in 2002, and afterwards all the municipalities and the panchayats were supposed to have the biodiversity management committees listing out what plants they have, what animals they have, what insects they have, what birds they have.
So in short, this book has a listing of every tree?
No, this particular book has a listing of every tree on the roadsides of Panjim and in the public gardens. It doesn't have the listing of the plants in people's houses and compounds.
And how many varieties are there?
We have listed on one road itself 145 different species which are there.
Where do they come from?
They come from all over the world. For example, the rain tree which defines Panjim, especially the Danan Banodka Road, is a tree from the Caribbean. A tree with leaves which shut at night and on cloudy days, which is totally typhoon and storm resistant, although they are huge trees.
So it won't fall down, chances are
It won't
less.
fall down because the moment it becomes dark, they shut their leaves
Okay.
and let the wind pass through.
Okay.
So if there's a storm coming in, it's not blocking
Oh,
the
wow.
storm.
Who brought these?
These trees actually came to Goa most likely from Singapore in the 1950s. I don't know whether it was Dr. Kaitan Xavier Futad or somebody else who brought it. But the planting is supposed to have been done by the Camera Municipal de Illes that time of Panjim, Mr. Costa, who was here
And which are the
in 1950s.
other exotic trees that you found in Panjim?
In Panjim, I think on the main streets, 50% of the trees are exotic.
My goodness. From Cuba and all other places, no?
From all over the world, from east, from west, from everywhere. In Goa, we are famous for cashew nuts and cashew feni, and the plant comes from Brazil.
Yeah.
We eat chilies, those also come from Latin America. So many of the plants which have naturalized here, we feel that they are our own, actually are exotic, which are naturalized
So
here.
Goa, your point is that Goa has a particularly rich biodiversity heritage?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Because we have jamun as our own plant. It's a Java plum. It's come from Indonesia.
I see.
Okay. So we have plants like Zam. We have local names for almost everything.
Yeah. Ramphal, Sitafal.
Yeah. And the plants have come from all over the world and naturalized here. Of course, we have our own natural plants.
Which were taken all over the world.
Yeah,
also.
like the pepper and the jackfruit, which are typically Goan or the Western Ghats, which have been taken all over the world. Mango is something not what people feel has been brought by the Portuguese. They only taught us grafting.
Yeah.
The mango comes from the northeast and
correct. It's
Thailand
very Indian.
and
It's
Burma.
very Indian.
It's very Indian.
But the grafting is their addition.
The technique came from them, so we had varieties of mango thanks to the Portuguese or the Jesuits who came with the Portuguese. The Jesuits need not necessarily have been all Portuguese. Some of them were Spaniards.
Yeah.
And some of them were from other countries.
Polish
also.
and Czech and whatever.
Even English. Thomas Stephen, for example, was Englishman.
Right.
Who came. So, but they came during the Portuguese era, that's all.
Yeah. So talking about Jesuits, of course, that is a link to our other book, which is, I know you're an alumni of St. Brito's in Mapsa, St. Brito in Mapsa. And this is your book, which you brought together. It's called Brito Retro, and tell us about it.
Yeah, Brito's Retro was a book that came up from the idea of getting different alumni to write about their experiences during school. A lot of it was from the internet, and some of it was collected by you, which was a good addition. There is one rare St. Mary's girl also who has written for it. But normally of boys who have studied in Brito's and passed out from 1946 to 1999 we have. This book was published in 2006 when we decided to form an alumni association once again.
So Brito's has been working hard to build its alumni from 1906 and even 76 or 66, I think.
66 to 76 there was the OBA,
Yeah.
and from 2006 we have this. In between 30 years it was dormant.
So you are a strong believer that alumni have a important role to play in building educational institutions, am I right?
Yes.
Why?
That very much, because they have gone through the school maybe 5 years to 10 years, some of them even 12 years who have done KG now. Earlier Brito's didn't have KG, now it has. So 12 years they're in that school, 6 hours a day, they played games there, their friends are there, their teachers are there, so that attachment is very strong. It's a long period of time.
Yeah.
And so they feel a sense of belonging there, and most of the alumni are willing to contribute to making the school better for the students who are studying there now.
Without pressures that a parent might face if the parent has children in the school or something like
Parents of school-going children, the issue is that you're always hard-pressed for time to bring up your children. You're hard-pressed for money because education also takes a lot of money. Other things take money. Alumni who are 35, 40 years old normally have cash to spare.
True.
And everyone likes to have a good time. When people are good organizers, they can get good sponsors. They can raise funds which a school or a parent cannot.
I really appreciate your vision on using the alumni as a way to build institutions. But tell us 3 other things very briefly because we are running short of time. One is your role in helping build Don Bosco Agriculture College. Starting with that.
Yeah. The idea of starting an agriculture college came to me when I was studying so far away from home. Why do we need to travel far away to learn about crops we don't grow here?
And we didn't have a single one in Goa.
We didn't have a single one here in Goa. So when I came back and started working for the agriculture department, I was made as a ADC to Dr. Dattaji Rao Salunke when he had come for an ICR conference here. And he was the one-man commission who was charged with finding whether it was feasible to have an agriculture college in Goa. This was 1985 when Father Ariosto Coelho had proposed that we should have an agriculture college, and his answer was no. 40 students will pass out every year, and Goa is absorbing 1 or 2 students every third year.
Oh, wow.
So what are you going to do with this? You're going to create educated unemployed. So over a period of 30 years, we worked with different people, different ideas, the Goa Education Development Corporation, some of the MLAs who wanted to start a college, but nothing worked. Documentation was there, but it did not work.
And to cut a long story short, you actually, all of you all showed that it could be done. And
so in 2013, when that idea came, the proposal that we made was that the students who pass out will be entrepreneurs. They will not be job seekers, they will be persons who will create jobs.
Very interesting.
So on that premise, the government gave the permission that this is going to be there, and they said, we will support the students from Goa, but you will not get students from Goa to those numbers. So 20 seats from Goa, 20 seats you can take from anywhere in India.
Second question, Botanical Society of Goa, which you helped revive. It was an old existing organization.
Yes, the Botanical Society was actually started in 1980, registered in 1990, and I joined it in 1996. 15 days after I joined, I became its secretary. I remember still the first general body meeting I attended. We required 11 people to be elected, and there were 9 persons present in the quorum.
I see.
And we didn't have enough members, even if everyone was elected, to form the executive.
If they were willing to.
If they were willing to, we couldn't form the full executive. So part of the executive was formed that day, and the remaining was created afterwards by mobilizing people to join and become executive members.
And then it has grown.
It has grown.
It has helped other initiatives.
It has grown to 400 members. We have.
It was a center of all the green activities at one stage, no? In between. But tell me, last thing, it would not be fair to conclude an interview like this without talking about Miguel Braganza, the President Scout.
President Scout was maybe the most formative part of my childhood. It was extended that I joined with Srikant Hegde as my scout master, and the first thing he did was he encouraged me to go for a patrol leaders training camp that was organized by the Bardez district. From there was no turning back. I learnt many skills, made many friends.
There were good scoutmasters in those days, no? The movement was
very
vibrant.
Edwin Saldana, who was there, was an ex-Jesuit seminarian who was our art teacher.
Africa returned.
He could never teach me art, but I learned scouting from him.
Frederick Noronha.
Frederick Noronha, who was an ex-policeman in East Africa, who was very good in training in drill and in camping skills. And we learnt a lot. It was hard work. Lots of time spent in Saligaon by the fountain side, camping, learning skills.
Till you got a President's badge.
Till the President's Scout. And that was a high point of going to the Rashtrapati Bhavan, receiving the badge from the President of India is a thing that inspires anyone. And I think that for a middle order student, I was not a topper in class or something, for a middle order student to get national appreciation is something that really boosts you. And then there is no turning back. That you know you can achieve if you focus.
While the clock is turning, it reminds us that we have to end up here, and I feel disappointed that 30 minutes is not enough to bring out all the work and all the activities of one Miguel Braganza. But having said that, I think we have done a fair job in introducing your work, and this will probably whet the appetite of the readers who will try to locate all the other books, that some of which we've not got chance to talk about, but definitely the covers will be displayed and they'll have to search for them, because these are technical books, a bit hard to find but very useful. Thank you, Miguel, for spending time with us today.
You're welcome, and those of the readers who are interested can always look at Navin Times on Tuesdays and the Gomantak Weekender on every alternate Sunday, besides of course the Goa Today.
Great, and keep going because they're really interesting articles. Thank you.
Thank you.